I don't know if any of you can relate to this feeling, but when I was younger, I used to think that I wanted to be rich, drive the nice car, have the designer clothes and watches, live in a mansion, and take crazy vacations. But recently, I realized that those ideas were more or less just cover ups for what I really want, and that is freedom. I think a lot of people around my age are seeing the next 30 years of their lives just being taken away from them by soul sucking jobs and lives that we feel trapped in. So today, I want to talk about the alternative and maybe a different path. What's going on, boys? Welcome back to the channel. And today, I want to talk about freedom, like what it actually means to me. I'm going to talk about making money and escaping a life that we're going to feel trapped in. And along with that, some of the real steps that I'm taking even today to build a life that I dream of. Because I really think a lot of us don't really want to be rich, but we're really just chasing a life of freedom. And before I get into it, I want to hear some of your guys' thoughts too in the comments below. What is your idea of freedom and what does your dream life look like? Before we can really get into it and talk about what freedom is, I think first we need to look at what the opposite of it is. Feeling stuck and trapped and what that looks like, because I think it's what most people actually live their lives like. And to me, being trapped looks something like this. Waking up super early every day, even when you don't want to, just to go somewhere for some time when somebody wants you to be there, 5 days a week, 40 plus hours a week, and then for 40 or even more years. Just always having the obligation to be somewhere because you can't quit. I could be a literal slave to my hourly wage, tied down by a bunch of payments like my car, my house, credit cards, student loans, always needing to go to that job just to survive. And then I could just come home exhausted at 6 p.m. to do nothing except for scroll on my phone because I'm tired, and then repeat that for those 5 days, and then 40 years, only having my PTO to escape for any longer than a night or a weekend. Then only ever being able to cram my entire fun life into Saturdays, and maybe into Sunday morning. But then once Sunday afternoon rolls around, the dread starts to creep in, knowing what's coming in the days ahead. Always feeling mentally drained and never actually being able to recharge and feel like I'm moving forward in life. Because really, that cycle would never end. And that's describing a life that I would feel really trapped in, and really the opposite of any sort of freedom. And just real quick, I want to say something so no one comes after me in the comments. I get that having a stable 9 to 5 job and income is really a privilege in the world we live in today. And not everyone can consider themselves lucky enough to have a stable income. So it's something I will never take for granted. But still, being forced to be tied to that job as a lifeline for my entire life is not a life that I want to live. And now, this is what I realized, and this is definitely an obvious take, but all that we do this for, this working, is just for money. And then we attach our unhappiness with our current lives to the lack of money that we have. And then like younger me, we get the ideas that, oh, if I had X amount of money, if I had $10 million, $50 million, then I'd be happy. But the real $1 million question for everybody living in that life, trapped at a job, and myself included, is if money wasn't a factor, would our lives even look the same? No, obviously not. What we really want is freedom. Freedom from a life trapped, doing something that we hate. Since when we go to a job, we trade our time for money in a paycheck, right? We can assume money is just an exchange of time, which means that the only thing more important than money is time, our time. And that's what I realized that I want back, my time. What I really want is to be wherever I want, doing whatever I want, with whoever I want, and for however long that I want. My version of freedom is control over my time. So although being rich and driving a Lambo would definitely be sick, I don't think I need that level of rich to be happy. And I think there's a way we can get something that is worth way more to us back, and that is our time. And I think we can buy this freedom back for much less than we think. Okay. So if I'm saying freedom is this easily achievable with much less money than we actually think it's going to take, what does this even look like in reality? First, we're going to need a plan and then be intentional with our actions over the next 5, 10, 15 years. And that's what I'm going to try to do. So obviously, to buy our time back, we need money to do that. And right now, the only way to get money is from our job. And this isn't a bad thing, and this is why I said earlier that some 9 to 5s aren't even a trap, if you use them correctly. The key is to have a good 9 to 5, and not be hindering your ability to keep the money that you're making from that job with a bunch of debt. So what do I mean by that? First of all, I'm gonna really do my best to avoid all kinds of debt, other than maybe a mortgage. I don't want a bunch of my paycheck every week to be going toward paying off these debts of stuff I either purchased years ago or barely use right now. And I certainly don't want to go into debt over things for fun. So that's the first part of the plan, to eliminate almost all of my debt, and certainly all of the debt with higher interest. Now, just keeping all of this extra money that I'm going to have coming in from my job isn't going to actually do much in terms of building me freedom if I just stick it into a savings account somewhere. And this is where investing comes in. Especially for the next 5 to probably 10 years, I'm going to try to invest as much money as I possibly can. And of course, like everything else here, I'm going to have a plan with my investing and a purpose behind it. I'm not going to be chasing quick returns and meme coins and stuff like that, but I'm going to be investing long term into well-diversified index funds and ETFs. The reason I'm choosing these ETFs, like VU, which tracks the S&P 500, which is, again, the 500 largest companies in America, is because I have such a long time horizon to be investing for. Like I said at the start, I'm not even going to want this money until I'm probably 40 or older. And for probably the entire history of the US stock market, these ETFs have proven to be effective at building wealth over those long 10, 20, 30-year time horizons. I'm not trying to pick the next Nvidia or Tesla and picking stocks. I'm just going to buy the whole market and let time and compound interest do its job and watch my money ride up with it. And alongside that, even though I said at the start that I fear a life trapped in a 9-to-5, I'm not actually against a 9-to-5 job. Because a good 9-to-5 job is one of the strongest financial foundations I've ever heard of anybody having. So especially over the next 5 to 10 years, I'm going to be aggressively chasing promotions, trying to learn new skills, get certifications, and doing whatever I can to make as much money as I can at a 9-to-5. And probably along the way, job hopping every 2 to 3 years, if need be, to get those promotions. Then, what's going to be my plan all along, to not be stuck at this 9-to-5 job, I'm going to use a lot of this free time that I have in my 20s to build other streams of income. Side hustles, maybe a business, social media. All ways to expand my ways of making money. I'm not sure how I would do it yet, but I want to use something from my 9-to-5 job to learn a skill that I can do on my own, do freelance, and then eventually run a business around it. And I know this is a pretty lofty goal for someone in their early 20s to set, but that's why I'm giving myself plenty of time to do it, a decade at least. I think it's way overhyped on social media, the ways that you can get rich quick in the next year or so, but for me, I don't think that's realistic, since my end goal is starting with a strong 9-to-5 job, seeking promotions aggressively to try and build that base layer of cash flow to fund the rest of my life, and then using those skills that I gain from my 9-to-5 job to build side projects, to build some side streams of income in the forms of side hustles and maybe a business. All the while trying to put as much money away into my investment portfolio as possible, to have that money gradually growing for me in the background. Like I've said a million times, I know it's not going to be easy, but I'm willing to put in a few years of pain now for all of the long-term gain later. And what's my dream life at the end of all this? What's the goal that I'm shooting for? Because I think it's a good idea to have a rough idea of what you want your life to look like, so you have some sort of guide in making your decisions, so you're always moving toward that goal. And of course, my goal isn't going to look the same as everybody else's. Yours could look very different. But this is what I think in 15 years I want my life to look like. I don't think I'll need millions of dollars to be happy, since not working isn't my goal. I want to still work, and I think it's part of a fulfilling life, as long as you're doing something that you enjoy. And that being said, in about 15 years, I want to have full control of my schedule, my work schedule, my life schedule, and during the time that I work, I want to be doing work that I find enjoyable, instead of just tolerating it to get by until 5 o'clock. I want to have built a small business with probably a few of my close friends and people that I like working with every day. And I'm not sure what it'll be. It could be a product, it could be a service, it could be a digital product, I don't know. It could be built around social media. But the bottom line is I want to be creating something, and I want to have ownership over what I'm creating. And week to week, it could look something like working 3 or 4 days a week, only for 6 or 7 hours a day, giving me plenty of extra time to work on other things that I find fun, and spend time with my family, and stay healthy and work out whenever I want. And alongside of that, I'll be the owner of it, so I can take off whenever I want to, and go on a fun vacation with my family without really having to worry about the cost of everything. And alongside of that, I want to start building a social media following online. It could be this channel, it could be another channel, or another type of social media, but regardless, I want it to be a good following of people that I can relate to and share ideas with. I don't need to be famous. I think a fairly realistic goal could be 100,000 followers in 10 years. I don't know, we'll see where it goes. And like I mentioned before, I want to have probably a $1 million investment portfolio, generating me tens of thousands of dollars of returns and dividends every year. My goal is freedom, and the way I'm going to get there is through ownership and building systems that work for me all the time, whether I work on them or not. And that's what my personal dream life would look like. And given the time I'm giving myself to accomplish this, and the number of goals I'm setting for myself, I would say it's fairly realistic too. If any of you guys share similar goals of financial freedom, leave them in the comments below, and subscribe to the channel, because documenting my journey of financial freedom is a lot of what this channel is about. And I think it's cool to meet like-minded people along the way. I really don't believe that any of us have to be stuck in a life and a job that we hate for all of our healthy years of our life. I think with a plan, some effort, and enough time, any of us can escape the life that we hate, and at the same time, build the systems to build the life that we're excited for every day. That's all I've got for today. If you guys enjoyed, leave a like, a comment, and maybe subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one. Adios, guys.